Hi there, Simon from simonwoods.com. Do you ever have a problem of finding wine? Well, in that case, you need to find wine. Find Wine, I don't know if you've come across the company before. They are a pretty new outfit. I don't think they've been going for a year so far. Two things I like about them. First of all, they've got some pretty good videos. Not as good as mine, of course. But the other thing I like is that they aim to not overwhelm people with choice. I don't know what you feel about if you're in some wine shop somewhere, you go in and you think, wall of wine, too many choices. And it's the same when you go into a restaurant and you have the food list and it's got like 3 starters, 5 main courses, 4 puddings, and then they give you the wine list and you need 4 hands to open it. I think one of the ideas of fine wine is to not overwhelm people with excess choice. So they started off and I think they almost had like 60 odd wines at a time. I think maybe it's expanded a bit since then. You're going to have to go on the website to find out. But they sent me a sextet, so let's dig into them. It looks like I've got some aromatic whites and some rather chunky reds, but I've not tasted them, so I might be completely wrong. But all the white more expensive than all of the reds. So we are in Verdicchio di Castelli di Jesi. This is Pallio di San Floriano. I can't speak. Can't see a vintage somewhere on there. I'm sure there must be one. Yeah, 2009. Verdicchio, very nice grape. Weird thing about it is you taste it when it's young, and it's almost sometimes you have this character I think of as being like a bit like nougat or nugget, as they say where I am. But then you age it, and this creamy nuggety edge turns into something that isn't all that far removed from Chablis. Let's try and see what this is like. Yeah, it's still on that young, peachy, nuggety style. And smells like it's going to be quite full-bodied, quite rich, but with freshness too. Nice wine, that. What it's got is it's got a richness, but then it's got this core of minerality. So it starts off and it's got peach, even something slightly more exotic, maybe something on the guava, lychee edge there too. But then the finish that you're left with, there's like a soil influence. You can feel a quite stern, earthy, I don't know if there's any volcanic soil here, but there's something, certainly something of the soil that's coming through. And yes, it's not got over the top acidity, but there is something there that's driving the wine, keeping it fresh, keeping it all together, making you think, okay, tasty now. Wouldn't be surprised if I stuck a bottle or 2 away for 3 or 4 years that there'd be an even more interesting wine. Pretty interesting as it is. Let's see whether the next one's interesting. Some Young Punks, and this is their Monsters Attack Riesling, 2010 from the Clare Valley. Yeah, Some Young Punks. I mean, it's a great name. Let's see what it's a great wine. It's a tight, limey monster, if you want to call it a monster. In fact, monster is probably one of the least things this wine is. 11% alcohol, and it feels like, if anything, it feels like a coiled spring. It feels like a panther waiting to pounce, but it's a baby panther, and so it's hiding behind its mother and sort of going, I'm going to pounce, but not now. Feels like a wine that really needs to come out of its shell. So I'll give it a bit of swirling and whirling and see if it does come out of its shell. And it is coming out lime, passion fruit, lychee, yes, some quite exotic things in with the quite stern, steely citrus character. And I think one of the reasons it's 11%, it's off dry. There's yeah, I don't know what the residual sweetness is there, but it's certainly there. And I'm actually quite pleased to see it. I think Australia for a while went down the line of thinking that Riesling should be an anal retentive, buttock clenching experience when it's young, and should be serious and only be drinkable with age. And this feels like it's a wine that's actually thinking, well, stuff all that. Let's actually make something that's interesting and classy, but also drinkable. And they've done that here. So you're getting this juicy softness, roundness, built more like a German wine than the Rieslings that Australia has traditionally produced in the last, well, can you say traditionally produced in the last 10 years? I know what I mean. Yeah, there's a juiciness which is really tasty, and it feels like, despite having that sweetness, it makes it very friendly now. There is also always that acidity behind that's going to keep it in good condition, going to keep it going. And well, it says on the back 750 millilitres of Monster Mayhem. Monster Mayhem maybe isn't the perfect descriptor of this wine, but pretty nice. Okay, let's see whether you'll get Monster Mayhem from the Jurchich Alter Raben Grüne Veltliner 2008 Deschant. Alter Raben means old vines. It doesn't say how alter the Rabens are, but let's give it a whirl. We're in Camptal here. It's not you don't maybe get the minerally intensity in the Grüne Veltliners here that you do in the best parts of the Wachau, but you do get honest, rich juiciness. And Grüne Veltliner in particular, you get this the classic Grüne Veltliner notes. This is on that nice mix between the underripe's the wrong word, but a less than ripe grapefruity edge, and the overripe peachy edge. So you've got a bit grapefruit meets peach here, with some nutty intensity. If you'd asked me on the variety, just tasting it blind, I'd have said either Grüne Veltliner or pear, but it's got quite a lot in common with Pinot Gris. Feels like it's going to be bone dry. One of those severe, almost Alsace type of intense Pinot Gris characters, dry Pinot Gris rather than the ones with the sweeter edge, even though it's Grüne Veltliner. Yeah, it feels like there is the age of the vines. It feels like there's something of the soil being sucked into here, even if it hasn't quite got that minerally attack that the Wachau ones can have. There's something of like a smoky Silvaner type character there. Tasty wine. Very complex. Sometimes Grüne Veltliner can be just such a lovely, intense, but ever so slightly simple wine. This one here, you've got all that minerality coming through. And having said that the Wachau was the place where the minerals come through, maybe it's a different style of mineral. Here it feels much more of the core of the earth rather than the finer quartzy edges. Does that sound a bit pretentious? Sorry if it does. I do get pretentious from time to time, but hey, it smells good and it tastes good, and that's the sort of wine I would like to watch. I'd almost want to decant that. I've just pulled the cork on it just now. I've got a feeling that it maybe even come tomorrow, the wine's going to be showing better, and there's going to be even more fruit coming through. Because at the moment the fruit's there, but it's more of these other characters that are to the fore, and it makes it a really good, tasty, interesting wine. But I think there's an even better one to come in a few hours' time. Maybe I'll report back. Let's try the reds. So we are on, what are we on first? Côtes de Rhône, Le Caillou, La Chapelle de Marin. Named after the Saint Nicolas Chapelle. Oh, there's a long story on the back. Not enough time to tell you all about it. Maybe I'll rinse my glass after that one. But it's the cheapest of this lot, £6. And it smells like just what I want from a £6 Côtes de Rhône. It's got juiciness, bounce, vivacity. I don't know if there's a touch of oak on there. There's something ever so slightly smoky coming through. Yeah, it feels like it's going to be an honest, gutsy glug. Well, it says on the back label, great with meat pies. Maybe we should call it vin de pie. But it's one of those, it really calls out for gutsy food. It feels like it needs to come out of its shell. I'm tasting it, these all came out of the cellar a couple of hours ago, so they're all at the same temperature. The whites look good. This one feels like it needs a bit more time to flesh out. But there's a nice bit of coiled raspberry cherry character. There's this earthy spice. Maybe I get this toasty note. Again, I'm not sure whether there is barrel there, but not going to complain about that at £6. Let's see whether I complain about the Alianza. Dawn. Now, Dawn, pronunciation, Dow, D-O-W, think of Dow, rhymes with how. Think of dung, as in the stuff that, you know, comes out of whatever, and Dawn halfway in between. And the wine here can be some of Portugal's best. The only trouble is that the locals are, I mean, they're very shy. They keep themselves to themselves, and they're not very good at telling the rest of the world about their wines, which is a shame because they can be, I mean, the Douro gets all the publicity, but for me, the good Dours are at least as good and often better. A bit more aromatic, not quite as powerful and intense as the Douro style seems to be, or at least seems to be at the moment. So let's stick your nose in here. Well, there's a smoky, herby intensity, and yes, which is But there's also a softness and roundness about it, rustic in the best sense of the word. The grapes here, Touriga Nacional is one of the famous grapes of port. So is Tinta Roriz, also known as Tempranillo. But there's another grape here called Jaén, which over the border in Spain is known as Mencía. If you've ever had wines from Bierzo, Mencía is the main grape there, and it adds a sort of peppery, ashy, aromatic character to the wines. It's more on that perfume side than the body side, and that's very tasty. And what's also very good about it, nowhere else in the world could make a wine like that, in the way that you get Italian wines, and I use this term Italianity. There's also a term called Portugosity, which means it tastes of Portuguese wines. So there's a dry cherry and red fruit sourness mixed with ashiness, and ashiness, by that I mean if you've had a barbecue and you smell the barbecue the day after, there's that cold ashiness, and a little bit of that in there just really adds punch and character to a wine. I think they've used a bit of oak in here that's given a smoky bacon character, but this is juicy and voluptuous is the wrong word. It's juicy, but held back fruit. It feels like if you were to give fruit like this to some people, they would almost let it go too far and it would go too wild. They've kept the wildness in here, but they've managed to hold it back, if that makes sense. But it's a £7 bottle of wine, and it's got heaps and heaps of character, which is not something you can say of too many £7 wines. And as I say, it tastes of a place rather than a great variety in a process. Let's see whether the last one tastes of what it tastes of. The Curmudgeon, like the label here. Shiraz, Barossa Valley. There's a Scottish company called Alliance Wine, and what they import loads and loads of wine themselves. But what they've done in the last few years is they've almost set up their own winemaking projects in I can't remember how many countries, but Australia is one of them. So this is one of their wines, and smells pretty good. It's got this juicy, leathery richness. Maybe I noticed the winemaking a bit, but vintage year is 2008. I've got a feeling it's a wine that's still young, needs to calm down. Let's see what it tastes like. Oh, it's just a bit too big. And there's lots and lots of flavour. In fact, for me, there's almost a bit too much flavour. Lots of licorice, lots of oak, lots of powerful ripe fruit, and it's in that dark, plummy, dense blackberry character. But it's almost a bit too big for its own good, and I like it, but I just wish that they'd found some fruit from somewhere that was a bit cooler and didn't have quite so much power. And I know that there'll be people who sort of will hoover that up, and they will sort of like wish it came in a larger bottle because they've finished the first one all too quickly. But personally, for me, I find it, particularly after the subtleties of the previous two, this one feels like it's something that's trying to assault you with power rather than caress and seduce you. And I don't know about you, I get to my age and I prefer to be caressed and seduced than overpowered, but given the choice. But I don't get the choice at my age. Hey, see you soon.